Welcome to episode 85 of From the Shed End with myself, T-Dart. Theo, how you doing?
Not bad. I'm feeling a bit better after the cold I had over the weekend, but I've still got a bit of a chesty cough. Made it to both the games, Chelsea Leeds and Chelsea Dortmund, and played five-a-side footy right before Chelsea Dortmund as well. So 3 victories, all in all, for my five-a-side team and for Chelsea. So I think that explains the smile on my face right now. How are you doing?
I'm good. We're on the up. We're on the up, so which is good. I think it's actually snowing pretty bad here. Like we've been able to avoid it, and now all of a sudden, like the snow is coming down thick and fast. So hopefully, it doesn't delay any football, doesn't stop any football from taking place this weekend, especially for Chelsea, because we look like we're on the up. It looks like we're building a bit of momentum and unity, which we're going to get onto. But no, I'm good. It's almost Friday. It feels weird. It's not Friday and we're recording, but it is what it is. For those that are new to this channel, new to the podcast, please go and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that link in the description as well. It takes you to all our episodes, previous ones that we've recorded, and all our social accounts as well. And make sure you leave comments as well in the YouTube videos that we post up as well. I really appreciate all of that stuff. But Theo, let's take it all the way back to last weekend, which feels like a lifetime ago. But last weekend, Leeds, a nice little 1-0 marginal win. Wesley Fofana, the hero of the day. Take me back to your thoughts to the game against Leeds.
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing about the victory was it was a victory and it was 3 points. I want to say it was the prettiest of wins, 1-0, and we didn't create that many chances. I felt we weren't clinical in that first half. I'm remembering that Havertz one-on-one with Ilan Meslier, João Felix hitting the crossbar. We had plenty of chances, but we just weren't clinical and didn't take them. And it kind of felt like, oh gosh, it's going to go, the same way as it did against Southampton and those other games. And I think I even texted you at halftime saying it's either going to end 0-0 or Leeds are going to snatch a goal. But fortunately, we kept the clean sheet and we actually did score a goal. And it was a goal from a set piece. So I don't know if Chelsea and the squad have been listening to our podcast we recorded a few weeks ago about, practicing set pieces at Cobham. But Chilwell put in a good ball for Fofana, and it was a brilliant header from Wesley Fofana, who put it past Ilan Meslier. Really pleased that it was 3 points. Like I said, it wasn't the prettiest of wins, but I think the most important thing is at this stage of the season is that it's 3 points. And I think it was really important to get that momentum and that kind of confidence and that boost going into the game on Tuesday. And I think that's what really helped us, I think, as well. Some of those players that maybe, especially Fofana, who hasn't been playing a lot of football recently, getting 90 minutes under his belt against Leeds probably did set him in a good place to play against Dortmund on Tuesday. And again, I thought he was brilliant in both those games. Like I said, not the prettiest of wins, but 3 points and against a very poor team, in my opinion. And it would have been a real shame had we dropped any kind of points against that Leeds side at Stamford Bridge. But now hopefully we can just continue with that momentum and take it into 3 wins in a row on Saturday.
Yeah, it was an impressive win. I think, you look back to how we've played, even going back to Southampton, that game that we potentially should have easily won, and we just struggled to break them down. And obviously a James Ward-Prowse free kick was the ultimate decider of that game. But as the game went on against Leeds, you just felt that we could get something out of it. And that first half I think was very cagey. It was proven difficult for us to break them down in spells, and it did feel like almost a lot of the same as what we'd seen before from Chelsea, and the fact that we just don't take our chances. We might create a few, but we don't take them. And we'll talk about strikers later, but it still shows that we are crying out for someone in that department that can finish goals, put goals in the back of the net. And credit to Wesley Fofana, like you said, someone who hasn't really had the best of starts at Chelsea. He's obviously been injured and he's been in and out of the team as well, but he seems to be trying to cement himself as one of those recognised centre-backs at Chelsea now. But I was impressed. I was impressed with how Graham Potter clearly got. He needed that win. We've all spoken about the pressure that Graham Potter's been under prior to the Leeds game, and getting those 3 points and turning out a result where it doesn't matter how you win as long as you get 3 points, and even if it's scrappy, even if you're under the cosh for the last 20 minutes of the game. I do have to question the subs. I think I said it in my match review. I think the subs, if I'm just trying to remember them now, so I think Dennis Zakaria came on with Conor Gallagher. I think João Felix and Raheem Sterling came off. Carney Chukwuemeka came on for Kovacic. Enzo Fernandez came off at the 84th minute with Ruben Loftus-Cheek for Trevor Chalobah and Noni Madueke. Questionable subs. And I want to talk about subs for the Dortmund game because I feel like Potter got that spot on in midweek. But I do have to question some of these sort of weird subs, and maybe Graham Potter was just still tinkering with the team. But like you said, 3 points is 3 points. And let's talk about Graham Potter in that game, because I feel like had he lost that game, surely, the axe would have been fully swung on him and it would have been the end of him at Chelsea. But do you feel that the players knew that the pressure was on Potter? The players were under a lot of pressure as well. The atmosphere that you've mentioned at Stamford Bridge, prior to that game at Leeds has been, very toxic at times as well. But do you feel that going into that game, the atmosphere felt slightly different, and obviously the players knew that Graham Potter needed to get that win? Do you feel that Kate gave the team something to go out and fight for?
Definitely, there was that added pressure on both Graham Potter and the squad to actually perform and get the 3 points, especially given that the opposition haven't been performing well. They're, I think, bottom three now. So it was almost like it felt like a must-win. And I think it was even reported that Graham Potter would have been given that Leeds game and a Dortmund one to kind of save his job. So whether the players knew that or not, I'm sure it played a part in them getting the performance. Big shout out, I want to say, to the back five. I thought the back three of Koulibaly, Badiashile and Wesley Fofana were brilliant, especially in the absence of Thiago Silva. And I thought, there was no Reece James. We had him in our predicted lineups, but he was a doubt for the game in the end. And I thought Loftus-Cheek did a decent job at right wing back, and he could definitely deputise there when he's needed. And I think Ben Chilwell, last 2 games, again, fantastic. He's really been, when he plays left wing back, he's got that freedom to really venture up the pitch and offer his support to the more attacking players, and probably our best player on set pieces. But yeah, I could just echo what you said about the substitutions. I thought Graham Potter didn't really get the subs right on the day. I felt a lot of people were complaining around me where I was sat that, you're playing Leeds, who are bottom of the league. Bring on a Mudryk, bring on Aubameyang, bring on Madueke, go for the second goal. But instead, it just felt like Graham Potter was probably really nervous and wanted to secure the 1-0 win. Hence why he brought on Zakaria, Gallagher, who am I missing out? Chukwuemeka. And he kind of, I think it was quite, we struggled at times to work out what lineup he was playing, because I think there were 6 midfielders on the pitch at one point. But yeah, I feel like you do that when you're maybe defending a big lead in a Champions League and you can't really give it away, but not when it's a 1-0 win at home against Leeds. So yeah, I think subs were a bit off, and the formation at times, I think all our heads were scrambled to work out what type of formation we were playing. But I think over the last 2 games, I think Graham Potter just really wanted to focus on getting the wins, and against Dortmund, especially the comeback and the 2 goals, and credit to him, he did that. So we could criticise the substitutions, but in the end, we got the 3 points, so that's what matters.
Yeah, and like you say, scrappy or not, I think 3 points is what he needed. Whether it was a resounding performance or whether it was just over the line, you just make it over the line and you're coming off the pitch with the 3 points. It doesn't matter at the moment for Graham Potter or Chelsea or the Chelsea fans. I think 3 points is 3 points. But you made a good point about Fofana stepping in for Thiago Silva, who's still out injured with the injury that he picked up at Spurs. I mean, he looks very comfortable, and I think when we talk about centre backs and we go back as far as we haven't really replaced John Terry or Gary Cahill. We had Kurt Zouma at one point. Antonio Rudiger was in and out of the team, if you remember, under I think Frank Lampard, and then came into the team and was probably arguably our best centre back at one point. Christensen. I feel like we've solved that issue now. I feel like we've got. You look at Badiashile, you look at Wesley Fofana, you look at Koulibaly, and obviously Thiago Silva. Trevor Chalobah's still there. Whether he goes in the summer or not is a different question. But Wesley Fofana, we know what he can do. He's proven. He's proven himself at Leicester prior to coming to Chelsea. He looks comfortable. He looks really good on the ball. What's your thoughts on Wesley Fofana stepping into that role? Ultimately, at some point, we're going to have to, ease and phase Thiago Silva out of the team, whether we like it or not. He's just not going to be able to play for the rest of his living days. But what do you feel with Wesley Fofana? Do we feel like we've got someone in there that is comfortable and able to play within a back 4 or a back 5 if it needs to be?
I think he's a brilliant player, really, really brilliant player. I think a lot of Chelsea fans, probably when we looked at our summer signings, we almost forgot about him because he hasn't played a single game since October. And I think the start against Leeds was his first start since October as well, because he came off the bench against Southampton and Spurs when Azpilicueta and Thiago Silva got injured. So and to actually perform the way he's done, having not made a start since October, is brilliant, and credit to him for doing that. And we spent a lot of money on him. We have to remember that we signed him from Leicester in the summer, so I think there's obviously plans for him to be the successor to Thiago Silva going in the next maybe 2 to 3 years. And I think we've got ourselves a brilliant player, a really good player. He looks really comfortable on the ball. I think his aerial ability is great from set pieces as well. He looks very mature as well on the pitch. I know you've got to remember he's still very young. Yeah. I think it was Gary Lineker who recently said when Chelsea signed him from Leicester, he was almost praising the acquisition, saying that Chelsea have got themselves a very, very special player, and a player that will be there for the next 10 years. So I think Gary Lineker, who knows Leicester probably better than anyone else as well, would have watched him, all the Leicester games. So I think it's coming from someone who knows what they're saying. But yeah, like you also said, he looks comfortable in a back two, whether he's playing alongside a Koulibaly, a Badiashile, or a Thiago Silva in a back two. But I think in a back three, even more so. Like I said, against Dortmund, he played in a back three alongside Koulibaly, and Badiashile, and both those players are relatively new to Chelsea. Let's be honest, they're not. We brought them in the summer, Badiashile in January, and Fofana probably would have took on maybe the role of the leader, being maybe the best English speaker amongst the three of them. But yeah, I think he looks really mature on it for his age, and I think if we can get him to play another year alongside Thiago Silva next season, I think he'll learn so much. But I'm really looking forward to seeing him, and I think, like you said, if he continues to progress like this, can stay clear of injuries as well, because we do know he doesn't have the best of injury records, then I think it's definitely a bright player we've got ourselves, and hopefully can live up in the footsteps of Thiago Silva, John Terry, Cahill, Ivanovic, Carvalho, and all the rest of our great centre-backs.
Yeah, it's definitely a good... So I know we've spoke about Graham Potter and the squad that he's got, but it's definitely a good headache for Graham Potter to have, because if you look at the luxury, I mean, even, again, we're going to talk about Dortmund soon, but in terms of Cucurella playing as a left centre-back, he looked very comfortable. So there's options for Graham Potter in those departments in terms of who do you play. And this is why I go back to the whole tactical thing of, if something isn't working in-game, change it, and you've got the options to do that. I mean, if we needed to drop back to three centre-backs with the wing-backs, or revert to a back four with two centre-backs, we've got the option, we've got the luxury of so many options in those areas. And even like you just mentioned, injuries, you look at Thiago Silva, he's out the team. Maybe last season we would have completely lost him. If we didn't have the likes of Badiashile, we didn't have the likes of Wesley Fofana in the team, or Koulibaly, we would have been, ripped apart maybe against Dortmund had we not had someone like Wesley Fofana that could step in and do that job. So I think it's definitely someone that has a bright future. I think he's only 23, maybe 23. So
yeah, around that age, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's got a bright future ahead of him. And, Todd Bowley's one of these owners that seems to want to lock down players to very lengthy contracts as well. So, I think it's only a good thing if we can keep him injury-free, like you said, and we can build around him and learn off someone like Thiago Silva, learn off Koulibaly, who, again, back end of his career at 31. I think it's a no-brainer to use him, Badiashile, maybe even, again, if Trevor Chalobah does go on loan next season, or, he ultimately leaves the club, which I hope he doesn't, but if he goes on loan, he can come back and step in and learn off, Wesley Fofana. You can learn off Badiashile when he comes back into the team as well. But it's a good headache for Graham Potter. It's a great headache for Chelsea. It's one area that we've definitely neglected, I think, over the years, and we allowed Christensen and Rudiger both to leave on once their contracts ended. It was inevitable. We had to address that issue. We've done that. So I'm with you. I think Fofana is probably, hopefully, the future of Chelsea at centre backs. But let's move on to Dortmund, because this is probably the best part of the week so far, if I'm honest. For once, I called it right in terms of predictions. I was very optimistic. I think I was probably one of very few Chelsea fans that thought we were going to score 2 goals against Dortmund. I was impressed. I'm going to go out there and say this is probably the best performance, bar AC Milan, but this is the best performance under Graham Potter I think we got to see. Give me your thoughts. Give me initial thoughts on the lineup. Was you surprised to see Cucurella as a left centre back? Was you surprised to not see Mudryk in the team, which I think was one of the massive question marks? But what was your thoughts initially on the lineup when it was announced, and obviously the atmosphere before the game as well?
Yeah, I think let's start with the lineup. I thought a couple of surprises, maybe. I think in my predicted lineup, I had Chalobah alongside Koulibaly and Wesley Fofana in a back three. But clearly, I think Potter going for Cucurella, who's not a natural centre-back, more of a left-back, goes to show that maybe he doesn't have much faith or trust in Chalobah at the moment, or he wants to give him a bit of time outside the limelight. But credit to Cucurella, he was fantastic on the night. So clearly, Potter selecting him, it worked out in the end. Other surprise was maybe Mudryk. He hasn't really featured as much recently, but I think it makes sense given that Havertz, what he offers as a striker. Potter recently said that he's our new penalty taker as well. He's good with his hold-up play as well, and obviously he got his goal on the night from the penalty spot, so I think his selection was justified as well. But not seeing Mudryk come off the bench was a bit of a surprise in my opinion. Maybe we'll touch on that in a bit, but lineup otherwise I think was pretty self-explanatory. If James and Chilwell are both fit, then they both start as the wing-backs in my opinion, and Kovacic was captain on the night. Pass the armband to Kepa, who both players for me were fantastic. Atmosphere, I'm going to say it was the best atmosphere all season at Stamford Bridge. It really, really was. It just had that sense of one of those special European nights about it, where even from before kickoff, the fans believed that something could happen. It felt like we really played our role as the 12th man that night. And Dortmund fans, they're good, they're noisy, but I felt like the Chelsea fans, rightfully so on the night, because we outnumbered them and we were more vocal and noisy than them. But yeah, atmosphere was fantastic before the game, during the game, after the game. And I thought the performance was exactly what we needed. It really was exactly what we needed. First leg back in Dortmund in February, Dortmund were there for the taking. They really were. We were the better side of the 90 minutes. So I kind of felt like if we play like that again and maybe have a bit of chance on our side, a bit of luck on our side, we could beat them. We can. And my one worry was scoring 2 goals, but credit to Sterling and Havertz. They got the goals and we kept the clean sheet. And Dortmund, let's be honest, apart from maybe the 2 Kepa saves, they never really properly troubled us. Bellingham had that big chance, which he scuffed, put it wide of the post, but they never properly troubled us. And yeah, players that I thought Chelsea fans have been a bit critical of this season, maybe rightfully so, because they haven't really stepped up to the occasion. Koulibaly, Cucurella, and Kai Havertz, I thought on the night they were fantastic. They really were. And I think sometimes the praise should be as loud as the criticism, because on the night they were really, really good. And I really hope, also Graham Potter, he's received a lot of criticism, but I thought substitutes, lineups, tactics, passion he showed on the sideline as well. It was all there, and it's what you want to see from your manager. So all 4 of those players and coaches I thought were fantastic. And I really, really hope now that can be a turning point in our season. We've got 2 wins in a row, which is the first time we've done that since October.
Doesn't sound like a lot, does it? But
yeah, but it's baby steps. First time since October we've got 2 wins in a row, and that was Dortmund's first defeat of 2023. Yeah. So we made it look relatively easy, but we have to remember this Dortmund side's been unbeaten and it's gone on a crazy win streak in 2023. So they're no mugs in a way, and we made it. We were the better team. You go back to that first half, all those chances we had in the first half, the Sterling chances, even the Havertz chance. Yeah, it was offside, but it was a brilliant finish off the crossbar and in the goal. But yeah, overall a really positive performance. I can just echo what you said. Probably our best performance of the season, or under Graham Potter. Maybe tied with that AC Milan 3-0 back in October.
Yeah, I think it was needed. I think the fans, like I've said before, have been definitely, rightfully as well, have been heavily critical of the team. Graham Potter, boos have rang out at half time or during the game or after the game. Players have headed down a tunnel as opposed to coming to applaud the fans. And I think it needed that switch. Something needed to change, whether it was the fans being the 12th man or, Graham Potter having his sort of team huddle before the game, whatever it was, during the training session. But something changed, something happened. And Dortmund's, like you said, you got to remember, Dortmund in that first leg were not electrifying. I think it was just one mistake. I think we left Enzo Fernandez 1v1 with Adeyemi, who clearly was going to win that race in terms of, and Kepa couldn't bring him down. He would have got sent off. We would have had Kepa in this second leg as well. So, Dortmund weren't amazing in that first leg. And that was the only thing that kept me going, thinking, if we get an early goal, if we get the first goal, as long as we don't concede first, I thought if we don't concede first and we score first, the pressure's on Dortmund. The pressure's always going to... And I don't think they've got the best away record in England anyway, or in Europe. I think their European away record isn't as good as at home. I know they've had a really good run in the Bundesliga. I think it's 10 wins or maybe 11 wins on a trot, but they were missing some key players. We have to be honest. Kobel being out for them in goal, Adeyemi being out. I think they lost Brandt very early into the game as well. So I think that changed things for them. That would have changed the whole dynamic of what they wanted to do. But I think like you mentioned, the back three in terms of Wesley, Fofana, Koulibaly and Cucurella kept Sebastian Haller quiet. I mean, he didn't have a shot on target. He didn't have a shot off target. He didn't really make any noise up front. We nullified anything that they tried to do going forward. And one of the things I was really happy that Graham Potter done, and maybe, I think I had a back four in my lineup. I think I went with 4-3 and then the 3 up front. But I think what Graham Potter done, and he got it spot on, was the 3 centre-backs. It allowed Reece James and Ben Chilwell, when you mentioned Ben Chilwell, to fly forward, get forward. Every opportunity we had the ball, we were flying forward. If we lost possession, if you notice how quickly, Reece James and Chilwell were back, and it was almost a flat 5 at the back. You had Kovacic and Enzo just sitting just in front of him, compact, kept our shape, and it was just brilliant to see. It's one of those things that tactically, when you get it right, you get to see it on the day. But I have to echo what you said about Kai Havertz and Raheem Sterling, Kepa, Koulibaly, Cucurella. All of those players that at some point this season have all been criticised, and even during the game, I had people criticising Sterling to me, and I might have said it, I think during the game, we're not going to win this game if we don't put these chances away, if we don't score. But I thought Sterling was brilliant. And he's going to be offside, more times than not if he's playing off the last defender, which he was. He's got to time his runs better. He's got to bend those runs slightly better. But, he's playing off the last defender. It's going to happen. Eventually, he's going to be offside a few times. And I thought he was brilliant. I thought Kai Havertz, I didn't have him to start, I'll be honest. I would have played João Felix as a false 9. But like you said, when Graham Potter comes out and says he's our designated penalty taker, ultimately he's going to be on the pitch. He's going to be starting the game. And I thought he done really well. I thought Kai Havertz done really well. Cucurella as a left centre-back worried me before kickoff. I'll be honest. I thought, if you remember back to the game, I can't remember what game it was. I feel like it might have been Brighton. Was it Brighton he played left centre-back?
I'm not sure. I know he hasn't played a single minute of football since West Ham, which was mid-February time. So I think
West Ham, then. That's
what worried me. For me, is he hasn't played football for nearly a month.
Yeah, there was a game he played left centre-back and he was awful. And I think he got subbed off. He was that bad. He got hooked maybe at half-time or just after half-time. But he done really well and he looked comfortable. Surprising not to see Mudryk in the team. I'll be honest. I think that would have been a game that I potentially would have liked to have seen Mudryk. But again, in hindsight, the best team that was out there was the team that won us the game. I want to talk to you about the penalty because I was a bit confused when it happened. Initially, let's get your answer first. Was it handball? I don't know if you've got to see it back, but was it handball? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is the encroachment of players. I don't know how it works because Chelsea players were also in the boxes before the penalty was taken. So how does it work? And I think you said to me, had he scored, would they have asked him to take it again? It's a weird rule.
Yeah, well, first, to answer the first question, was it a penalty? 100%. 100%. If you look at how his body turns, he's not even looking at the ball, but leaves his hand trailing away from his body. And you just have to think is the trajectory of the ball he's blocking the trajectory of the ball, and had his hand not been there, that's a ball in the box. That could potentially be a goal. But it's the fact that he doesn't even make an effort to keep his hand close to his body and he turns away from it as well. So I think the pundits after the game explained and were all in agreement that it was a penalty. In terms of the retake, maybe a bit of luck on our side, but I think what really influenced the referee's decision to let Havertz retake the penalty was because the player who cleared the ball after it came off the post,
he was in the
was
box,
a good couple yards inside the half circle, whatever you call it. Basically the zone of the box after the referee blew the whistle. So if the rules are the rules, and if those are the rules, then it's a retake. But I can see why Dortmund fans were frustrated because you do wonder, had he scored, and Chelsea players were in the box, would they have let him retake it? Probably not. Not. So it's a weird rule, and we don't see referees kind of enforce that rule very often, especially not in the Premier League. But it seems that Champions League referees at least are a lot more disciplined. They're more willing to go look at the monitor. They're more willing to let decisions go to VAR. They're more willing to talk to their fourth official or whoever's in the whatever you call them, those technology rooms, VAR rooms, yeah. And I feel like that's what we need to see more now, more communication, more kind of these rules being enforced. Because you look back, I think it was 2019. When Manchester United got that comeback against PSG at the Parc des Princes. And Rashford scored that last-minute penalty. They're not giving that as a penalty in the Premier League. I think the player is I think it was Kimpembe, puts his hand like this. You see a lot more handballs given in the Champions League than the Premier League. So, and I'm all for it, honestly. I think if the rules are there, then let them kind of go ahead with them. But yeah, keen to hear what your thoughts were on the penalty and the encroachment and the retake.
I think it was harsh. I do, and I think it was a penalty. I think it was, and it was rightfully given. But I do think it was a little bit harsh, and I need to rewatch it again. I've only watched it twice. I watched it live, and then I watched it the full match again the day after. But I think it was slightly harsh, but at the same time as well, I think I said on the match review, you think back to Reece James at Anfield, you think back to some of the decisions that have gone against us where clearly, going back to the FA Cup final a couple of years ago as well. So things have gone against us, and sometimes when VAR is on your side, you just have to just roll with it and just take it that it's the VAR's decision. And I think whenever the ref's been sent to the monitor, 99% of the time, it's a penalty. They don't send them there unless there's a reason. So I do think it was slightly harsh, but I'm going to take it. If it means we get through to the last 8 and we're in the quarterfinals, I'm going to take it 100%. But I'd be annoyed if it was the other way around and that was one of our Chelsea defenders, and we were almost robbed of a goal to an extent. But in terms of the encroachment, I just don't know. I don't know the rules, and I don't get it. I think now you've mentioned it, and maybe I didn't pick this up watching it, but yeah, if the player that clears the ball is in the box before the ball's been kicked, then yeah, that makes complete sense. But I just think there needs to be a bit more clarity, or I love what they do in rugby where you can actually hear the conversation that's going on, and I think cricket does the same now. I think when the umpires are looking for an LBW cricket, you can hear the conversation that's happening, and I think football needs that. I think it just needs to maybe give a bit more clarity as to what they're reviewing, what they're looking at, what is the concerns, and maybe it will leave less room for interpretation that way as well. So, but look, penalties are penalties. Kai Havertz had my heart in my mouth at one point. I think, the first one, it was almost Jorginho-esque, wasn't it? I think he tried to...
the little stutter. I think it was that little stutter before he kicked it. Yeah, it had me a bit nervous, yeah.
He tried to outdo the goalkeeper, and he did, to be fair, he did. I mean, let's be honest, I think he did do... Brilliant penalty. He just was unfortunate to ricochet outside of the post and back out. But to do it again, to step up again, and do the same thing, pick the same spot. I mean, that is ice in your veins sort of stuff. But what's your thoughts on, because I don't think we spoke about it, what's your thoughts on Kai Havertz being the designated penalty taker? It's one of those for me that sort of sits on the fence a little bit. I mean, Reece James, we know, can take a good penalty. He hasn't taken many, but Kai Havertz, I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a bit in agreement with you. I mean, I always look at players' kind of penalty record. You look at the likes of Jorginho, the likes of Lampard, they probably got like an 80-90% record when it came to taking penalties. But I think Havertz, from the penalties I remember him taking in the past, he scored the one in the Club World Cup final that won us the Club World Cup against Palmeiras. Yeah. But before that, I remember him missing quite a poor one against Villarreal in the Super Cup. I think he might have missed one in the League Cup, whether it was against Southampton or Aston Villa in one of those shootouts last season. So I don't think he's got the best of records. I looked at his technique against Dortmund. It felt like he was relying on where the keeper was going to dive rather than having kind of that spot fixed in his head before he even placed the ball, which I'm not too sure about, because that little stutter basically determines where he's going to place the ball. Similar to Jorginho, he looks at how the keeper moves right before he's about to shoot. But like you said, to have the confidence to place it exactly in the same spot and actually get it this time shows the type of player he is, the confidence he has, especially a lot of players maybe having missed the first one, they would have maybe passed the ball on to João Felix, Raheem Sterling or another player. Yeah. But to actually pick the ball up again and kind of what was the winning goal in the end is very brave of him. And I think the fact that he's willing to do that shows that he should be our penalty taker. And I think maybe now that he's missed one and he scored on probably what was probably one of the most nerve-wracking penalties he would have taken, I think it would do him a world of good. So I'm hoping that his next couple penalties will be a bit more reassuring, because I'm not going to lie, I was almost hiding behind the shed bar that was in front of me. But yeah, I think I'm all for him taking a few more, but I think if he misses maybe 2 of the next 3, I'll say pass it on to João Felix, Jorginho, or like you said, even one of the defenders, a Reece James, a Ben Chilwell, a player like that just will place it in a corner.
Yeah, I think that those sort of calling the bluff of the goalkeeper penalties are just not for me. And I think if I remember back end of Jorginho's time at Chelsea, I think the goalkeepers wised up to it and just stood on the line and waited for him to kick the ball. And eventually, you could do it so often.
Fabianski against West Ham. Yeah, West Ham last April, that probably the worst penalty I've ever seen taken at Stamford Bridge, because he called the bluff.
It does happen. You know, the goalkeepers wise up to it, and they'll double bluff you, and they'll make sure that you kick the ball first. So we just have to be careful. And obviously Graham Potter said, I think in the press conference, you know, the players have been practicing penalties all week. But I looked at the squads. I remember looking at the lineup and thinking, if it goes through to penalties, I just don't know who's our penalty takers. You know, you maybe look at Enzo Fernandez. You maybe look at Reece James. Obviously Kai Havertz would have had one. Maybe Kovacic, maybe Ben Chilwell. But you look at Wesley Fofana, you look at Koulibaly, Cucurella, you know, Sterling. I remember I'm sure he ducked out of one in the Euros. I don't think he took one in the Euros, if I recall. And I don't think I've ever seen Raheem Sterling take a penalty in my life, to be fair. But who's our, you know, if you know, we'll talk about it in a minute. But if we go through to the quarterfinals and we end up in penalties, we haven't really got any penalty takers that are convincing, I don't think, have we?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking back at, we had a fair few penalty shootouts last season, then FA Cup, League Cup, Super Cup, Club World Cup. Yeah. And if I remember some of the penalty takers, I think Aspie never shies away from a penalty. Jorginho's no longer here. Mason Mount is another one. He obviously wasn't in the matchday squad because he was suspended.
Hasn't got a good record though, Mount, has he?
Yeah, it's been a bit hit and miss. It's been a bit hit and miss, I agree. And I remember even he had to take one. He missed one against Norwich, I remember, last season, then had to retake it and scored the retake it. But yeah, his record's not the best. Like you said, I think he might have missed one in the FA Cup final against Liverpool. Other penalty, I always say just give it to the centre-backs. I think Silva...
just put their foot through it.
Yeah. Rudiger and Silva, I think in the FA Cup and League Cup finals against Liverpool, they just like slotted it in right in the middle. They almost don't really feel the nerves because maybe they just want to just put it with power and conviction. But yeah, give it to the centre-backs. I'm sure Koulibaly would blast it in the roof of the net. But you're right. In terms of natural kind of penalty takers, we maybe Havertz, Mount, Enzo. I don't know if he used to take them for Benfica, but we don't really have a natural penalty taker. You're right.
It's a bit of a worry going into sort of quarterfinals and not having someone that we can heavily rely on. But I just want to, before we round up on Dortmund, I want to talk about Kepa, who for me was arguably, I know Cucurella ended up with man of the match, but Kepa was outstanding. I mean, for that free kick, I think it was Marco Reus free kick. What a save, because that's going in. I mean, that's completely going into the bottom corner of the net, and he pulled off a couple of saves. He wasn't very, very busy, but when he was when he was called upon, he was, dare I say, world class. But he was definitely, showing his worth in terms of what we paid for him and putting in a good shift. And it's good to see the resurgence of him. I put out a tweet yesterday to say, he's one of the only goalkeepers with more than 50%, saves in not just the Champions League, but in the Premier League as well. 80%, yeah, exactly. So it's even higher. So he seems like he's found his place as number one choice at Chelsea now. Obviously, Mendy's out injured, and Bettinelli's always going to be the understudy. And Salina's still, I think, playing for the development squad. But in terms of Kepa, he seems like he's got himself that number one spot in Graham Potter's mind now. Do you think that's the correct choice, or do you think we need to see what Mendy can do when he comes back from injury?
I mean, it'd be very hard to drop Kepa now after all his performances. And I've always said that Kepa trumps Mendy when it comes to having the ball at his feet. He looks a lot more comfortable with the ball at his feet. His clearances are a lot more comfortable. He's happy to play out from the back. And he looks like, a lot of our kind of players, they start with Kepa, they go out to one of the centre-backs, to the wing-backs, to the midfielders, and then we try to penetrate into the opponent's box. But like you said, 2 fantastic saves on the night. The save from the Marco Reus free kick, and there was another one in the second half where he puts a really solid kind of hand out, but not only to save it, but to just push it out of any kind of danger area. I think that's what's really impressive as a keeper, because in that first Lampard season where he received a lot of criticism, I remember he was getting hands to these type of shots, but it was just kind of like trickling in afterwards. So it was almost like, I don't know what he's done with his wrists, but they seem a lot more, they're not made of glass anymore. They're a lot more powerful. Like you said, he's playing with a lot more confidence, a lot more conviction. And Chelsea fans a year or two ago, when they would see Kepa in a starting 11, they kind of, bite their tongue thinking, shoot, where's the mistake going to happen from? But now when we see Kepa, we know what we're getting, and that's almost a clean sheet. That's a lot more confidence. And to give him the armband as well. This happened twice now against Leeds and against Dortmund on Tuesday. Shows that he's a leader now. He is a leader. And I see his body language, the way he talks to players between when the ball's out of play at full time, the passion he shows to the fans as well, because I was in the shed, so I was right behind his goal when the full-time whistle went, and he just turned around to the fans and just roared towards us like that. That's what we want to see. We want to see leaders, players that are passionate. So, I'm all for Kepa staying in the starting lineup, but it will be a bit of a headache for Graham Potter when Mendy is back fit, because he's a player that's used to playing first-team football now. He won us the Champions League, so it's going to be tricky having to maybe decide what to do in the summer.
Yeah, it's another brilliant headache for Graham Potter to have the luxury of having to choose 2 relatively quality goalkeepers. But just at the end of the game, it almost boiled over a couple of times. I think there was a couple of occasions where I thought Conor Gallagher was the headless chicken Conor Gallagher that we know he can be at times as well, but he actually composed himself. But there was a moment between Wolf and Chilwell at the end of the game, and there was a very bad challenge, to be fair, from Jude Bellingham on Reece James, which I initially thought was worse than it looked. But on reflection, obviously, Reece James got up and carried on. And then there was a bit of afters with Jude Bellingham, and I think Cucurella after the game as well. He just seemed to be bubbling over as that game, going to like the last, 5 minutes of the game, and then obviously into stoppage time. But I like that. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are. I like the fact that Chilwell was getting under the skin of some of the players, and Reece James was getting stuck in still. Who was brilliant on the night, but he was still getting stuck in and making sure we won the ball. We were first to the ball. I like that. I love that sort of shithousery that we like to call it. And even Kepa, I think at one point got booked because he wanted to take the free kick outside of the box, even though the free kick was inside the box. And it was just those little things that mentally gets under players' skins, and it gets into their mind, and it can just affect their game somehow. And I think that we've done that well executed. But what was your thoughts on Bellingham? Because I think he was one of those players that was always expected to come into the team for Dortmund and, be wonderful and do something creative and maybe score a brilliant goal. And like you said, he missed a sitter in the game. But what was your thoughts on him overall? And afterwards as well, I didn't really like that from him in terms of, getting squaring up to Cucurella. What did you think of that?
I thought over the 2 legs, he was relatively poor, if I'm completely honest. I'm a big Bellingham fan. I'm a huge Bellingham fan, especially after the World Cup. I thought he was one of England's best players at the World Cup. But over the 2 legs in his Champions League round of 16 tie, I don't think I saw enough of Bellingham to think, okay, this is a £120 million player. We still have to remember he is very, very young, and he is a fantastic player. He's still at Dortmund. He's learning. He's the captain of Dortmund. But especially in that second leg, I thought I saw a lot of Jude Bellingham that made me think, he's lost his cool, he's lost his head. I mean, I'm sure the game got to his head. In fact, Chelsea were 2-0 up. He missed a sitter. I'm sure that challenge he did on Reece James, he's not doing that challenge if Dortmund are winning, or if it's maybe any other game than a Champions League round of 16. But he lost his cool a bit, and at full time, I think he got in a bit of a scuffle with Cucurella. Credit to Cucurella, he didn't really fight back or argue back. And I think Enzo Fernandez even stepped in, which I agree. I like that bit of fire, that bit of energy, that bit of shithousery. Yeah. But I think Bellingham, it wasn't his night. And his post-match interview afterwards, where he mentioned how poor the referee decisions were about the penalty being retaken, how he doesn't understand all of that rule and why it was retaken. I think it goes to show that it was just not his night and he was very frustrated and things boiled over for him. But still, overall, a fantastic player. And I think eventually he will leave Dortmund, and whichever club gets him is very, very lucky to have him as a player.
Sounds like he's going to be Liverpool or Real Madrid, but we'll see. Could be Chelsea, you never know. But yeah, just to round off with Dortmund, and brilliant atmosphere at the end as well. I mean, obviously with the argy-bargies going on, but to see Graham Potter with the I don't know, the belief that he can probably go on into the Leicester game and get something out of it, and just seeing that unity from the team was brilliant at the end as well. And just to walk off knowing that we've achieved what we set out to do in the first place was brilliant as well. And like I said, he definitely got those subs right for me personally on the night. So, credit to Graham Potter, credit to the players, credit to everyone that was there as well, that was making the 12th man be known. Because the Dortmund fans were noisy. They were letting off their smoke bombs and everything else before kickoff, and throughout the game they had the drum going. So, it was definitely a hostile night in terms of both sets of fans. But, on reflection, I think we came out on top of that as well. But let's talk about the quarterfinals, because there's still some decent teams in there. PSG went out yesterday, surprisingly. Obviously Spurs, the bottle jobs, we knew they were going to go out. But there's still some really good teams in there. And I think I sent you something yesterday, which one of our accounts that we follow on Twitter sort of put up. And I mean, ideally, like we said, if we can avoid Napoli, maybe we get a Benfica in the next round, or I think the other one was Inter Milan, and like you said, one of the other AC Milan as well. But who would you like to see Chelsea get in the next round? Who would you like to see us get, and maybe in terms of trying to get to the game as well, not just in terms of how we're going to play, but getting to one of the games away in Europe.
Yeah, well, we obviously don't know our kind of full list of opponents because there's still 4 rounds of fixtures next week, Tuesday, Wednesday. But from a selfish point of view, it's April. You'd love to travel as a Chelsea fan to maybe somewhere a bit sunnier, Lisbon. I'm trying to think who else is in there.
Just for the warning, my cousin's there now and it's raining. It's rained every day.
I think it's raining all over Europe at the moment. But yeah, again, if I'm going from a selfish point of view, Napoli as well. It's a crazy football city. I know their fans are quite hostile and can be relatively violent. But yeah, I'd rather avoid them though, given how good they've been this season, and probably the most informed team in Europe at the moment as well. I think they only lost their first game of the season against Lazio last weekend. I think there's no easy games, if I'm completely honest. Even Benfica and Inter Milan, maybe on paper, is probably our easiest fixtures, or if Leipzig were to progress against Manchester City. But even Benfica, they're good. They're a good team. They're a very, very good team. You look at them, how they played them, how they got past Club Brugge so easily, and that's without having lost Enzo Fernandez on deadline day of January. But yeah, I think I'd love to go to Lisbon, the Estadio de Luz. I've been there. It's a nice stadium as well. San Siro as well. Inter Milan or AC Milan. Obviously Porto is still in the tie. They've got Inter Milan next week. Revisit to the Estadio de Dragão as well. Would it be quite special for Chelsea fans? So yeah, a trip to Italy or a trip to Portugal. That would be my answer. How about yours?
I think I'm the same. I think obviously the only other option, and this is if they get through, which they should, is the Real Madrid scenario.
3 years in a row of Real Madrid wouldn't be nice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they are beatable. I look at them, they are beatable. I'd be very surprised if Liverpool, and I don't know how it works in the quarterfinals, but I don't know if Liverpool will be able to overturn that deficit that they've got to overturn to go through. So I think maybe Real Madrid, but like Napoli would be a brilliant one. It's again, bucket list sort of stuff, very similar to Dortmund that you was lucky to get to. But bucket list stuff in terms of Napoli. But yeah, Porto would be another good one, I think, as well. That's from a travelling and obviously playing them is more likely. You want to try and avoid a Napoli. I think, you don't want to play them in the quarters. You want to try and get as far as you can. I think for me personally, I think they're the ones that we have to worry about in terms of winning the Champions League. Bayern Munich as well. I mean, they played some good football, but I think Napoli are the ones for me. I think they're the ones that we have to avoid, just based on what you said. Had a really good run in Serie A, and they're playing some really good football. So I want to try and avoid them, but I want to get there as well.
Yeah, and they've also feel like this Napoli side, they're playing like they've got nothing to lose.
Yep.
I can't say his name, that Georgian chap, Kvaram Maradona. I think that's why they nickname him, because he's playing like Maradona at the moment. It's his first season in Europe and he's playing out of his skin. A brilliant player. They've got Lozano as well. They've got some brilliant footballers. Anguissa, who was a bit didn't do much at Fulham, and now he's performing really well. So I think they've got nothing to lose, and top of the league in Serie A. They can maybe rest a few players in the Serie A and focus on the Champions League as well. So I'd have to agree with you. They're the team to avoid, maybe alongside Bayern Munich and Manchester City.
City not too fussed. Not in Europe anyway. I mean, they play slightly different in Europe, but I get what you mean. But it's going to be interesting. I don't know when the draw is. I tried to ask you this. I think it'd be
Friday.
A week Friday.
Next Friday, 11 a.m.
Yeah. I think it's a week Friday. So anyone who's listening, make sure you're tuned in. We'll probably try and do a live draw for that as well, if we can, and hopefully get a nice, decent draw for the quarterfinals. But let's switch it back to the Premier League. Massive game coming up. I always say must win. This is not a must win. This is just let's continue with the progression. Yeah. I think we're in that stage now. It's not a must win, but let's continue with the progression. Leicester away, King Power Stadium, 3:00 Saturday. I mean, give me your thoughts on that. It's a game that I would expect us to win, but what's your thoughts going into it?
Yeah, likewise. A game you'd expect us to win given the kind of form we've shown in the last two games. And I think Leicester's last game, they lost 1-0 to Southampton. And they've been really inconsistent with their form this season.
We've been there before, though.
We've been there, we have, yeah. I like to put that, even though it was only a few weeks ago, I feel like that's a different chapter of Chelsea this season. We've turned that page. But yeah, very inconsistent Leicester team this season. They started off really poorly. I think maybe around Christmas time they showed a bit of form, which maybe saved Brendan Rodgers' job. But I'm remembering back at that reverse fixture back in August, we went down to 10 men quite early on. I think Gallagher got 2 yellows. Yeah. And somehow we managed to get a win, 2-1. So I think the fact that Leicester can even beat us with 10 men or get anything out of the game with 10, playing a team with 10 men goes to show how poor they were. But I think they've improved since then. Maddison, obviously a fantastic footballer. They look relatively solid defensively, but like you said, I think if we need to just continue that form and continue that momentum that we showed. And I think if the players played anywhere near the level that they did against Dortmund, then I think it should be a win, and I really hope it's a win. But, with Chelsea, it's never that straightforward. So we don't really know for sure. But, I think it's going to be an interesting game, 3 p.m. kickoff Saturday. So going to have to find a way to watch it. That might not be exactly legal, let's put it like that.
But, I know all about that.
I'm looking forward to it. I feel like... first time in a while that I'm looking forward to a game now that we showed a bit of form and momentum, and going to be interesting to see the lineup as well, because obviously Cucurella I think performed really well. Badiashile obviously is not cup tight, he's able to be selected for this one, so he can feature. You start to think maybe do you start maybe resting a few players now going into this kind of pivotal part of the season. I think we might have a couple. I think there might be an international break coming up. Actually, I'm maybe wrong.
I looked yesterday because I think we've got one maybe at the end of March. I think the only one I can find is end of March. I think it's that. So we've got Everton on the 18th, and then there's a break then until the 1st of April. So I'd imagine it'd be the 30th, maybe that weekend.
But you can't rest players if it's a must win and you want to play your best team. But I think it's the substitutions that are going to be quite critical as well, because I think it's going to be a tight margin. It might be a 1-0, a 2-1, that type of scoreline, and the substitutes could make a difference. So I think we're going to have to see Dortmund style subs and not the ones we saw against Leeds. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I looked last night at our record against Leicester, and it's not the best. It's not the best at Leicester. I don't think we've won there. I'm just going to try and pull it up.
We won last season 3-0, I believe. But I think before then it was quite hit and miss.
Before then it's been draws and losses, so we've not had the best record there.
I think it was the defeat last season. The season before that was the nail in the coffin for Frank Lampard.
It was. Yeah. It was. So I think we've not had the best record there, and going into this game, I'm going in with a lot of positivity. I'm going in with the idea that we can, off the back of that 1-0 scrappy Leeds win, really brilliant performance against Dortmund. I'd have to go out on a whim and say that I wouldn't change the lineup. I would keep the lineup exactly how it was against Dortmund. I get your point in terms of injuries, but I think that's a luxury of having 5 subs now. I think that's a luxury of being able to rotate the squad, but I think one of the things that I'm hoping Graham Potter does over the next 3-4 months or whatever, how long's left in the Premier League, is to get some consistency, get some cohesion amongst this team now, and get the team playing well. And I think you're only going to get that if you're playing the same players week in, week out, and getting them to gel, blend, understand each other, read the game together. You're only going to get that if they're playing regular football together. And if you keep swapping and changing, it's never going to happen. So I think it's a bit harsh on Badiashile because obviously he hasn't played in the Champions League. He's not registered. But I think if we stick with that back three of Koulibaly, Cucurella and I've missed one out there. Fofana, of course. If we stick with those three and use the same... So I would use exactly the same squad as we did. Even with Kai Havertz, we moan about him, but I think if we're going to try and use him for the rest of this season as a false nine, as a striker, or whatever we want to call him, he has to be in the team. We have to make sure that he's got the same players that he's around. Sterling and João Felix has to be those two. For me personally, we have to then rotate the squad, as you said, with the subs, with Madueke, with Modric, with N'Golo Kante is going to have to come back in at some point and get a couple of minutes under his belt for the next 2 or 3 months. But those
Pulisic and Mount going to be back. Yeah.
Another one, yeah. So we've got, and this goes back to my point where I kind of understand what Graham Potter means about having to train all these players, and he's got too many players to train. I get it as slightly, because how are you supposed to do something tactically, prep for a match day if you've got so many players? You have to leave certain players out and they have to go and train elsewhere. I do get that to an extent, but me personally, I would keep the same squad that we played with Dortmund. I thought it worked well, and I think you're right as well. I think the subs have to be, see the game out, very much like we did at Dortmund. If we're 1-0 up, we're 2-0 up against Leicester, see the game out, bring on, your Zacharias, bring on someone who can just hold that ball in midfield for you and just slow the pace of the game down. But it's going to be interesting, as always. I think it depends. Part of me thinks Potter will switch things up again. I hope he doesn't, but... in terms of a prediction, in terms of predicted lineup, what would you change? What would you go with, and what would your predicted score be as well?
It's a hard predicted lineup because, like you said, I feel like Cucurella deserves to stay in the 11, but at the same time, Badiashile also deserves to be there. So it's whether maybe you rest one or you switch Cucurella to left wing back. But then again, Chilwell has been so good. Whether you rest Reece James, because I know that he was a doubt for the Dortmund game with a tight hamstring, and you bring back Loftus-Cheek at right wing back. But I think I'm going to have to agree with what you said and just play the same lineup that I played on Tuesday against Dortmund. And I think that we need a bit more consistency with our lineups as well this season. And Graham Potter to maybe have a favoured 11, which we haven't really seen this season. And that's why I think the subs are going to be really important. I think I'm going to go with the same lineup that I played against Dortmund, but I want to see subs that are more that are a bit more that kind of come into play with the game more, because we saw against Tottenham, we were 2-0 down, and it was only in the 80th minute that we brought Aubameyang on when we needed maybe goals. I don't want to wait until the 80th minute if we need a goal to make a change. We need to be seeing that maybe at half time or even 5 minutes after the break. So yeah, I think substitutions will be really key. And like I also mentioned, Kante, Pulisic, Mount, they're all ready to play now. So I think the 5 subs, if we can use all 5 of them, they're going to be key to Saturday's game.
I agree.
I didn't give a prediction.
I know she avoided the scoreline prediction.
I'll let you go first.
I think 2-0. I'm going to go 2-0 again. I think we've got, if we play the same lineup, I think we've got everything within us to carry on that momentum from Dortmund going into this game and securing the 3 points and putting in a really good performance. I think more so the result and the 3 points, I want to see a good performance, and that's what I was crying out for when we went through that bad run of games. I want to see some good back-to-back consistent performances where we look like we're going to win. If we lose and we've left everything out on the pitch, I'm not too fussed because you can't win every single game. But in terms of the performance, I'm going to go 2-0. Goal scorers I'm not going to do because pick a name out of a hat sort of situation. Who's going to score, we don't know. But I think it's going to be 2-0. And I think we're going to play really well. I really do. I think this will be the turning point in our season. Over to you.
Yeah. I think now that we broke the curse and we scored 2 goals for the first time of the calendar year, I think we'll do it again. But I also can see Leicester getting a goal. We have to remember we're playing away from home. Our last 2 clean sheets, obviously they were at Stamford Bridge, but we're playing at the King Power now. So things will be slightly different, but I think it'll be 2-1 Chelsea. I don't like being confident because every time I'm confident we end up losing. But yeah, I think given a Dortmund performance and how well we played, I think I'm entitled to be confident. So let's go 2-1.
Yeah. No, it's a good Either way, it's 3 points. Let's put it like that. It's 3 points, isn't it? So just before we wrap up, quickly want to talk about strikers because you put out a tweet this morning. And I think I spoke about it on one of the videos that we did earlier this week. But Tammy Abraham, buyback clause, 70 million. Give me your thoughts, because the thought of 70 million for Tammy Abraham stinks of Romelu Lukaku part 2, if I'm honest. But give me your thoughts on Tammy potentially returning as our number 9 for next season.
I think when we saw Tammy, let's be completely honest, Chelsea fans weren't that upset because we saw he was not good enough to be our first choice number 9, and he wanted to be our first choice number 9. And at times he would start, he wasn't clinical enough. He was very clumsy on the ball. He'd slip a lot. And sure, he had a brilliant first season under Mourinho at Roma, but this season I don't think he scored that many. And for 70 million, he's not worth 70 million. I think he's worth max maybe 40 or 35.
At a push.
At a push, exactly. And I think, I know we're going to have to wrap up soon, but there's so many other better options out there. We're getting Nkunku possibly. I don't know if that's completely 100% yet, but Gonzalo Ramos at Benfica, he's having a brilliant season, got a hat-trick at the World Cup. Ivan Toney is another one. I don't know what's going to happen with his ban.
Glad you brought him
the betting ban. But yeah, there's some other options I think that are more kind of ready to fill in straight away, because I still feel Tammy Abraham, he's no longer a youngster, but he still feels very raw and he still feels very clumsy. And I think, sure, he's done well out in Serie A, but Serie A is a bit of an easier league than Premier League, let's be honest.
Yeah, it didn't work for him when he came. And, I know he had a really good spell under Frank Lampard and he was sort of put out of the team after that. But for 70 million, I'll be honest, I'll go and give that money to Brentford, go and get me Ivan Toney. I love Ivan Toney. I think he's a brilliant striker and I think he needs that step up. And I do, I spoke to a couple of other people offline and, what about the ban? But I mean, I looked this morning, there was a couple of players, I think, for Boston United who had done similar sort of breaches in terms of numbers. I think it was like 400 and something or 500. They only got a couple of months ban. The worst one was Joe Barton, who was in the thousands, and I think he got like a 2-year ban, but he got it appealed and got it down to 13 months. Now, if Ivan Toney's out, and I think that the hearings next month or potentially might be next month, so if they ban him from April and he's out for, let's say 6 months, let's say he gets a 6-month ban. It's like getting a striker in January. It's like getting a new signing in December. I would take the hit for the first part of the season, play Kai Havertz, play Nkunku if we get him, play João Felix if we keep him for the first part of the season. Broja will be back as well. I'd take a massive gamble on, no pun intended, but I'd take a massive gamble on Ivan Toney. And I'd go with him because he's a proven striker. He knows the Premier League. He knows where the back of the net is. He can take penalties. He's strong. He holds up the ball well. He makes good runs. He can take on defenders. For me, 70 million would be Ivan Toney, in my opinion. Someone that knows the Premier League very well. So, yeah. But although I think there was a buyback clause, I think, is it Newcastle? Didn't they get him from Newcastle? I might have got that wrong.
I think he went, was it Peterborough before Brentford, but before that I think it was Newcastle.
I'm sure they've got a buyback in there, but I'll have to double check that, don't quote me. But Ivan Toney's my 70 million, and anyone else who thinks Tammy Abraham, please don't wish it upon us, please.
I agree.
Yeah, that's a good way to end the podcast. For anyone who's listening, please go and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you do all of that stuff. Make sure you like, share, comment, all of that stuff. Make sure you hit the Linktree link in the description as well. It takes you to all our previous episodes and all the social accounts as well. So make sure you give those a follow. Theo, as always, the therapy session for Chelsea. It's been a good one. It's been a good one this week. We haven't had to...
Well, it wasn't really a therapy session, if I'm honest. It was more of a smiley kind of a...
You can have good or bad ones, but this one's been a good one. But yeah, until next time, this has been episode 85 from The Shed End. Until next time, thank you very much for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. Take care.